Hi, this is Mike B. I'm recording to share with Swati when she returns what I did to the contract listing. I had to rename the underlying queries, and because of that, I had to touch the BERT again. And in the process of doing that, I took it the rest of the way in terms of making, excuse me, the report manager query do all of the heavy lifting so that we don't have to noodle a lot or as much, hopefully, in BERT. And I'll show you what I did to make that happen. So first, I'm going to share my screen. Take off, put on captions. So put on captions. And take off the floating host control. So now I'm recording. And I'm doing all of my work remotely from my desktop at the Don Howe building. And there's it's faster machine for one, and then it also provides some safety. If you're creating an OMP, you create a package without as much problems as might happen outside the firewall. So this is the project that I downloaded the project as it was last published by Swati. And it's for TDX 76476. And I went through a few iterations here. I grabbed some components from the report I just finished. And then the first version here is what Swati had created online. I added to that a row count, and that row count lets us see how many filter out based on changes to the parameters. Then I did some iterative changes. And in having to rewrite the query, I think what I'm beginning to see the value of is leaving some read-only kind of controls in place. So this is the query. Let's see here. Yes, it is 2C. This is the query actually from here. And there's 2B. Let me shut one of these down. What I try to do is keep the project separated. So there's project 1, version 1. Version 2. Version 2B. And here I'll stop and talk a little bit. So the green, lime green, is actually items that should be hidden. And because BERT processing occurs top down, left to right, just the same as HTML processing. You can do things with that to expedite and improve your database retrievals with your queries. So in this case, I created a grid control that's hidden. Let's see here. Going to the outline view and the body. And I called it data access. And it's populated with right here with the project office parameter information. And now that you see that, I'm going to go to the final version. It also has in the grid control dynamic text control information. So in this case, what I'm doing is there's a little bit of a script there, and I initialize a parm value. Then I set it to the value of what is in the current populated drop-down list, what was chosen. And that's what the toString does off of the LI1, Project Office LI1. So let me pull that up. Again to the outline, report parameters. And I put all of the main query variables under a parameter group called the same and suffixed with the version of the project that I'm working on. So here's the amended query as it now sits. So the query on the server, Tririga server, will retrieve by project office. It will retrieve by purchase type. And these values were actually brought down from the system generated query. But what I did is I copied that parm value and I edited it and I put into it the static values that Swati had originally coded. And so now what this buys us is that we don't have to do any filtering in the data binding at all. It will all run simply by choosing a parameter and flowing through these formula. And I'll show you. So what happens is we set the actual value from the chosen parameter from the dropdown, and then we set that value into a read-only display type additional parm, and that's what's used in the heading of the actual report for project office and for a purchase type. So I'm going to go ahead and run this just to show you what it looks like. So this flows through. We choose from the dropdown. This replace command in JavaScript will remove the square brackets from the text when you're setting it to the actual value that you want to use to initiate the query. So when we do that and we set this value in parm value, it then takes bracket all bracket and changes it to all bracket CPM bracket and changes it to CPM. And then we take that value. If it was all, we change it to null to do the all reference. If it was not, anything else we set to the value of the filter parameter that was defined for the query, the base query. And then I, as a final housekeeping item, set that value to a value that we can display and use in the report heading or footer for the purposes of giving feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And so now we've got all of the parameters that were originally defined, and the ones that actually are used by the report to initiate the query are hidden. But as we select these values from the presented list, it sets those values and in effect begins the data query. So here's the default value for this report: all project office, all purchase type, and everything else is null. And there you see, I left it as Swati had originally coded it. I think the only thing she displays is this all, but I added to it display of the rows returned. Likewise, when you change it though, so for instance, I'll just change it to CPM and say, okay. You'll see that change in the header, and you see the row count has also been adjusted because it retrieves fewer. And then if you filter it further, and I'm going to set it to CPM for the purchase type as well. Now you see it changed from project office to filter row because we've got more than one filter being used. And again, it adjusted the rows based on the return. And then one more time, I'm going to use it to pick one of these external companies. So when you look at this vendor, it's a conglomerate kind of presentation. It's both the ISA and the external vendor in that column, depending on the contractor being used. So I'm going to page forward a little bit to show you that. And maybe for CPM, we don't have any ISAs. I guess that is the case. Okay, so I'll change that back in a minute, but again, to give you a feel for how some of these other filters work. So here's the vendor, external vendor in this case. So when I populate that external vendor here and change this back to all, we should see just that external vendor return. And there we go. And I'm going to change this again to all. So there's the full set of rows. And again, if we look at the vendor column, there we go. Here we have an internal service agreement, and you see it, the name changes to match the CST org versus the 2 org value return. So, and these other variables work in the same manner. So we could say, if we're trying to capture this ISA name, let's try it. So I'm going to change the ISA. There we go. You see it's changed in the heading to demonstrate that it's for an ISA. So one more variable to test is the project number. I'm going to try this one as an example. And I'm going to take out the filtering by that specific ISA just to see if we get different values returned. Okay, and we do. So now it's being filtered by project number ending in 2442. And it's 4 pages. And at the end, so what I did is I added a page at the bottom, end report, and this banded reporting just it made sense to add because of the need to test and reconstruct the report after the query change. It allowed me to prove out the values from Swati's report to this report. So, and that's also the reason I added the rows. So this is working. And the other thing to note about this type of coding is that when I make a structure like I did here, this grid data access, I add a comment, and this explains what it is and how it's used. And likewise with the dynamic text. And also in the actual report itself. The report design is named, it has been renamed from the default generated by Tririga, the Tririga ACP. That way, when outputs are generated, a friendly name is generated. this renamed report design is what was packaged for the external query and the OMPs. So there we have it. So this is working. Let me save this. And I'm going to go ahead and export this. And it's an archive file. And if I click on the project, it selects everything, including subfolders. So you have to make sure that if there are subfolders involved, that you check those off. And I know Chris K often will add the project. I leave it off. And again, it's this renamed. There's the original as generated by Tririga, the Tririga IBM control. And it's got that bracket, fancy bracket prefix, square bracket prefix, v2 query, and then a long name. Renamed it to this friendlier name. So that's what I'm packaging. And it's using just one properties control. And create only selected directories. And I output it to an export that's in the same folder from which we're generating our export. So there we go. And I do want to overwrite it. And it is asking me to save because I had some minor changes. I think I changed some comments. Problems encountered. Okay. Why? Oh. Ah. That's why. Try it one more time. And that was successful. So now I'm going to go ahead and publish that. So go to Tools. And log back in. And I'm using the, using the single sign-on for all this work because we've been bitten before where we hadn't tested it with the correct security. What the heck? Do this again. There we go. And open the collapsing menu drill down from the top, home, tools, document manager. CST BERT. And I'm going to take the existing report and remove it entirely. So I'm going to select it and delete it. Then add, okay, and then I have to reselect CST BERT, drill into it, and upload what I just exported. There it is. And you see again, it's got the friendly name. That's what's actually going to display on the outputs. So now submit. Then we have to relink that to the external query. And there's our external queries. These look identical to me. Oh, but I think I fully listed it here. So this is the one. That's for you. Yep. So it shows it's deleted, so I'm going to remove it. And I'm going to relink it. So CP P on tracks, listing by project office. Accept. Save. Run. And there we have it. And I'm going to just generate the default listing again. And this is the same results that we had from BERT. But you can see it's got pagination now. I'm going to go ahead and generate it as a PDF just to show you how that changes the output. Now you see when it generates with that, the name of the report design. And I previously generated this for version 1. I'm going to highlight it so we know where it came from, and it's generating it at the top. I think I want to generate it in here. Here we go. So everything has a happy home. So now that's done. And basically I lather, rinse, repeat on the other 2 reports. So that's it for right now. Thanks for listening.